Hello, welcome to this week's weekly outlook. Let's kick off with the dollar. As you know from last week, we've just been waiting for the dollar to give us some signs that we could potentially be turning around. We've been watching this resistance here and looking for it to turn to support. So if we zoom in on the actual candles, you can see that we're getting this reversal pattern that I like, where we read 1 week's low and then failure to close below it, and then we read that week's low and failure to close below it. It's just called 3 wicks, 1, 2, 3, and yeah, it's in the context. The pattern alone is not very powerful, but once you get it in the context of the overall market coming into confluence of higher time frame support, and also if I quickly take a look at stocks, we can see we've been very bearish on stocks, resistance, and now we've come up and we've printed this candle. Yes, candles alone don't really matter much, but in the whole context of this move, in the context of the market, this is just a pullback phase and we're at the top of resistance and we're getting this very, very bearish sign. So that would mean risk off. That would mean more strength coming into the dollar, more strength coming into the yen, more strength coming into Swiss franc. So with that being said, we've got this bearish looking candle. Any pullback into this area could potentially roll this over. So looking at the dollar, it's coming into a level of support. I'm looking for some strength to come into the dollar. We're getting this pattern, and now that's put me on red alert to start looking at dollar pairs again. Aussie dollar to the downside, euro dollar to the downside, pound dollar to the downside. These are putting dollar pairs back on my watch list for 2023. And if they set up, if some trades set up, day trades set up next week, I'll post them into the group. But let's take a look at Euro USD first. Do we have confluence of some resistance? We do. Have we sold off from here before? We have. Overall context of the market is bearish, so we're getting this push, and now we're in this pullback phase of the market and we're starting to slow down. What's the signs that we're slowing down? Well, look at these candles. We've got a failure, a wick failure to close below, above this weekly candle, and then we get another failure. It means bulls are starting to run out of steam. We're not getting that closes above the weekly highs that we once were getting. And the overall context of the market is bearish, and you start to see this exhaustion and a level of resistance, and it puts me on red alert to start looking for selling opportunities. You can see this candle pattern a few times over here, so you can see it here where we get 3 wicks, failure to close, 1, 2, 3, very bearish candle, sells off. You can also see it here, 1, 2, 3, sells off. You can also see it here, 1, 2, 3, sells off. So yeah, the pattern works, but it's the context of where the pattern is and the overall structure of the market. So that's why I'm looking for Euro USD sells in the coming weeks. Maybe not so close coming up to Christmas. Market might be a little bit quiet, but it's something that I'll be keeping an eye on. Euro USD to the downside, pound dollar to the downside. We're getting that 3 wick pattern everywhere across the market. Are we at a level of resistance? We are. And we can see that the market is starting to run out of steam, and if stocks are starting to fall and money is starting to run into the dollar, then this makes sense to me to start looking for selling opportunities. So I don't have any trades or any sort of lower time frame levels at the moment. I'm just going over my overall bias on the higher time frame, so start looking for selling opportunities in the pound and the euro and the Aussie, etc. So let's go to Aussie dollar, one of my favorites actually to look for selling opportunities. Got that pattern again, 3 wicks. Are we at a level confluence resistance? We are. Do we have previous support turn to resistance? We do. So we have overall structure of the market. I'm sure if we go down into say the H4, we can start looking at patterns, start looking at the market structure on the lower time frames. We can see that we've had this structure, and now we've come down, we've come into a level of support. Any pullback or a break of this structure, then we can start looking for selling opportunities, and that is something that I will post into the group. I post all my trades that I take into the group. So Aussie dollar is something that I like the look of to the downside very much. Let's take a look at Kiwi as well, coming into an area of resistance on the weekly, resistance, and now we're getting that 3-wick pattern. We've got a very bearish candle on the weekly time frame, and you can see how many up weeks we've had, and now we're starting to slow in the momentum. The overall trend in market on the higher time frame is to the downside, so you can be forgiven to, you know, looking at this looks very bullish in lower time frames, but the overall context of the market is bearish, and we've swept these highs, failed to close above them, 3-wick pattern, and now we'll be starting to look for selling opportunities in Kiwi. I do like dollar CAD to the upside. As you can see, it's been one of the strongest due to CAD weakness. We would need a pullback for me to get involved with this, maybe come down, take out a weekly low or something, and then look for those higher prices. But dollar CAD looks pretty strong, one of my favorites going forward. Dollar CAD and Aussie dollar. Dollar Swiss I'm not too interested in, because like I say, if we do have the stock selling off, we'll have strength coming into US dollar and Swiss franc. So it's not something that I'm interested in, trading two strong currencies against each other, but and that's the same with dollar yen as well. I'm not really too interested in that. So let's move on to the trades that we took last week, which were Aussie yen to the downside. I'll just quickly go over that. Looking at this level of resistance for a selling opportunity, we took out a previous weekly high and rejected it, came down, came straight back into support. So that'll be one of my trades of the week looking forward. Let's just go down into the H4, and we have a little bit of structure. I don't want to be selling straight at this support where we've had a rally before. I'd like a pullback, maybe straight back into, let's just tidy this up so you can get a clearer picture. A pullback maybe into this trend line resistance. You can see how clean it's been over the past weeks or two. So a pullback into that area would be nice area to short, or if we can get a push and then a pullback, so this support could turn to a resistance, and then that's where I'd look for the selling opportunities. But at the moment we do have a little bit left on this running, so we do have some positions running on Aussie yen. But if we want to get involved again, any pullbacks, and we can start looking at structure in the lower time frames, previous support and resistance, if this lines up quite nicely, then that's where I would look to sell Aussie yen. Support, resistance, but we just let price action do its thing. We may not get a pullback, we just have to adjust to what price is telling us at that time. At the moment we are at support, and I wouldn't be selling straight away. I would wait for a pullback, or if we get the push and then a pullback on Aussie yen. So we do have some positions running on Aussie yen. We have some positions running on CAD yen. This range has been quite nice to trade. Once you have your bias, which we had a bearish bias, we were looking for selling opportunities up in this area to take out last week's high. It sold off too quick, but it gave us a second attempt when it rallied up to these highs. Resistance, and this turned to resistance again. Just like Aussie yen, we're at support. So either we pull back, this range is still in play, either we pull back and look for selling opportunities again, or we break out of that range, pull back, and then that's where we look for more selling in CAD yen, especially if we get that strength coming into the yen. We do have a interest rate decision out of Japan on Tuesday, so maybe that's something to look at after Tuesday, where maybe that pushes price and then we can try and get in a pullback, but we'll have to just wait to see. So Aussie yen, CAD yen, I like to the downside. More yen pairs. Kiwi yen, you can see we've come up and we swept this high and we sold off. Market structure is still intact at the moment on the daily. So if we could get a break of that, these highs obviously are in play at the moment. Resistance, and support. But if we get a clear break out of that, a daily close and a retest, then this is where we can start looking for some momentum to come into New Zealand yen. So Aussie yen, CAD yen, New Zealand yen, those are the pairs that I like. Swiss pairs, I don't really like trading those. They're very choppy, and yeah, we have enough to look at with coming into the end of the year, especially those dollar pairs picking back up again. So let's take a look at some crypto. We'll take a look at Bitcoin. Let's take a look at the weekly, get perspective of where we are. Obviously, we've been in this very bearish run. We've come up into a previous area of support turned to resistance, and what do we have happening down here? 3 wicks. The momentum is dying to the upside. We've got a very bearish candle, which in its own doesn't really mean much to me. A bearish candle doesn't mean much, but it's the context of the market, structure of the market is bearish. This is a pullback. We've come into previous area. I was looking for a little bit higher. Maybe we do come up, take out these stops. That would be quite nice, and then look for selling opportunities. But on the lower time frames, if we go to the H4 and take a look at structure, we can see that the structure is starting to shift. We've had this support. We've also had these levels of resistance turn to support, and now we're below those, so I can't deny what's happening at the moment. The structure is shifting, so maybe we pull back. This is an area to look for selling opportunities. I wouldn't be just selling straight away. I'd wait for the week to open. If it's going to be a down week, maybe we open, we come higher, get below the open, and then look to sell. So looking for maybe a pullback, and then the key areas to look for. If we come up and sweep this high, I would be delighted, and then that would give me a second look to sell Bitcoin. But at the moment, from the higher time frame perspective, it's bearish. If we're looking at stocks starting to roll over, we could see Bitcoin starting to roll over. I'll just take it one low at a time. My target would be here, and then we'll see what happens from there. So any pullback, look for a breaking structure, look for these lows to come into play. That's what I'm looking at next week. Anyway, let's take a look at Ethereum. Let's take a look on the weekly. What's happening? Structure of the market is down. We have come into an area. I'll just highlight that for you. Support. We've made a push, failure to make a higher high. So if you look at this structure, lower lows, lower highs, and we're coming back into an area of previous support, and we're starting to run out. We've had this weekly candle, inside week, raid one side, and now we've had this bearish candle. So I would be looking for selling opportunities in Ethereum as well. How that looks on the lower time frames, I haven't really given it too much thought. Similar with Bitcoin, this is an area on the H4 that if we get a pullback in would be key. Resistance, support. If we pull back into there, I'll follow structure. If we get the pattern that I'm looking for here, then I'll look to sell, come down and take out these lows. If we get a strong candle, pull back and retest from the other side, then it's not ready to roll over yet. But this, in my eyes, is a key area to start looking for some trading opportunities. At the moment, we've had this push. We'll have to wait for a pullback, and maybe we get a continued push to come down and take out these lows. So that's what I'm looking for. That's I didn't want to keep this video too long. And just to recap, I'm looking for some dollar strength to come into the end of the year and start looking next year for those dollar long plays. I'm looking to sell Bitcoin. I'm looking to sell Ethereum. I'm looking for Aussie yen and CAD yen trades next week. Maybe New Zealand yen as well, and I'll keep you updated every day. Every day I post a video in the morning what I'm looking at that day. As we know, price action can change quite quickly, so it's nice to have a quick recap in the morning of what I'm looking for that day, and any trades I'll post into the group. But thanks for watching, and hope you have a nice Sunday.